Hello and welcome to another episode of Sports and Songs Podcast. We're on season 5, episode number 36. Andy, tonight's the songs edition. We're going to talk about music. Today is 7/11, July 11th,
Happy
2024.
7-Eleven Day.
Happy 7/11 day.
Happy
Yes.
Slurpee Day.
Get the free Slurpees at 7/11 all day today. So
Probably.
we've done lots of album reviews. I think this is our 204th or something. We've never done this one from Kiss. We're both big Kiss fans.
Yep.
But the album we're going to do today is the 7th studio album by Kiss called Dynasty. Dynasty. Now it's
Not the 7th album, because had a couple live ones in there and the solos and everything else. But
yes.
the studio album.
So this is the 7th studio album by the band, and I'm going to hide this banner here and talk about this because most people, whether you're a fan or not, are going to easily remember this album cover. It's seared in our brain, right? Album cover for Dynasty. Looks like they're all standing there with one photo being taken, and
But they're not.
They are not. They're solo photos here taken and imaged together for the cover. So, Andy, this is 1979. Disco was becoming big. Kiss as a band was on the verge of breaking up. They said, hey, let's do this disco album. So this is Casablanca Records. The album came out following, and the following tour of this was called The Return of Kiss, as the band had not yet released a studio album since Love Gun, which was 1977. And in 1978, they released all the 4 solo albums that year. And then Alive 2 came out, their second live version the same year. And so they said, let's call this one The Return of Kiss. Now, before recording this album, the Kiss members were working on separate various demos. Peter Criss, the drummer, was working on his own things. He was recording and, in fact, submitted a 4-track demo with some songs on it. Ace Frehley recorded and submitted a 5-track demo to the band. Said, here's what I've got. Gene Simmons wrote and recorded a large number of demos. Surprising. Gene Simmons just does nothing else than work on Kiss stuff. And then Paul Stanley wrote songs and worked with Desmond Child. And so they put these songs together. Now, what's the thing that stands out for you, Andy? It's not like they were sitting down recording this together as a group and recording some tracks and working through and composing lyrics and working on this as a team. They're all working independently. What's your thoughts on that?
The beginning of the end. I think the solos albums was kind of, they all got a taste of it. If you look at the stuff, I'll take Ace Frehley's album, for example. No other the other 3 guys didn't work on his album, which was kind of cool because that was the whole idea of the solos. They all did their own thing. I think they all got a taste of it then. How many bands did you see from this point on to today? Hey, you know what? The lead singer wants to do a solo album. Hey, the guitarist is going to do a solo album. Okay, they come back together, but it's just not the same afterwards. And this was pretty relevant after this, too.
And I think, because the solos started out by saying, we want to break up and go our own ways. And Gene and Paul got together and says, hey, before we break up, we've got too much of a good thing here. Let's all do our own solo album. Number 1, we could multiply the sales by 4.
Yep. Put
4 albums out, and we could all get out of each other's hair and just do your own thing. And so that really worked.
Kiss is Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley from Kiss. Kind of release it that way. We all can still feed off each other, release at the same time.
And so that was 78. Now they get together for the next studio album, and everyone says, here's what I've got. Essentially, I'm envisioning in today's world, I'm going to send an email to the team and send all my attachments, all my files, my recordings, and here you deal with it. And Ace says, here's mine. It's all kind of reply all. Here's all my stuff. I don't want to get together and be with you guys, but here's what I think we're going to do on this album. Here's what I want to do. So what I found out on this album, Andy, is that when they got to the recording, it was also done the same way. They all recorded their own stuff. They put it all together as a studio album, but it wasn't that. So you can tell, I don't know if the tensions were high. I'm guessing they were, but they liked doing the stuff solo it and said, "Look, I can deal with this. I can just do my own deal, and we can get a producer to engineer, put it all together, and smooth it over and make an actual studio album." But yeah, that was not the case. They were not sitting together out on a remote ranch somewhere putting together songs and lyrics and music composition.
And this was 1979. I mean, today that's done all the time. I've heard
Yes,
some bands do that today. They'll record their stuff in their studio at home and they send it electronically and someone else mixes it. And you think they're all in the same room. Today,
yes.
yeah, no problem. This was
Right.
1979. So, credit to the producers and engineers back then for doing it.
Yeah, because they're recording this on what, 4-track tapes or 8-track tapes or whatever they were
Eight
doing.
reels and going and just mix a reel to reel to reel. Yeah.
Oh, so amazing. I did not know that. Now let's get into the track listing. Now, what it is 9 songs from Kiss, but all very different once again. So the first song is I Was Made for Loving You. Lead vocals is Paul Stanley. So that's his song. He did.
Yep.
He took it and ran with it. Worked with Desmond Child, the producer, Vinny Pancia.
Yep.
Next song is 2000 Man. Ace Frehley does a cover, a Rolling Stones cover song called 2000 Man. And that is inserted as song 2. Song 3 is Sure Know Something by Paul Stanley, does the vocals. Dirty Livin'. Dirty Livin'. I got a comment here, Andy. I want to get your thoughts on this. It's a Peter Criss song, and this Peter Criss's disco-influenced song, Dirty Livin', set the direction for the album project to say, hey, let's do a disco album. This was the song that he submitted. Disco was big, and the guys got together and says, hey, let's make this a disco album. I didn't know that either.
Well, it started as a joke with the I Was Made for Loving You by Paul Stanley, where he told somebody, writing disco songs isn't that hard. I could write one, no problem. And they pumped that song out, and boom. Now, I'll get to this later in the homework assignment, but think of it. Kiss, till recently, all said they swore, not a disco album. Then they started going, hey, you know what? We just kind of went with the sound of the times. Now, think about other music today. Today's country music isn't what country music was 20 years ago. It's the sound of the times.
Yep.
Rock and roll isn't the same. There really is no rock and roll anymore. You don't hear a Tom Petty anymore. You don't hear a Rick Springfield anymore. A Billy Joel. You don't hear that anymore. You have to be, oh, he must be country then, or he must be this. You don't hear rock and roll. They've all gone sound of the times. So that's kind of where I think Kiss went with this. They didn't say, watch this. This will be funny. We'll do a disco album. I think they wanted to prove that anyone could pull off disco at this time, and they did.
Now, the interesting thing is the Paul Stanley lead vocals is kind of a disco song. The Ace Frehley 2000 Man, I don't think is.
No, because he just went straight off the Stones.
Yes, Sure Know Something by Stanley has a disco feel to it. Dirty Livin' does. The next song is Charisma, Gene Simmons. That's just a Gene Simmons song. That's something you sound. Yeah. That's just Gene being Gene. So this is not a disco album. There are elements and songs on the album that are disco friendly, but it's not. You're not gonna put it in and press play and listen to 9 straight disco songs. That is not the case.
The 2 songs they released were disco flavored, so that's kind of where it comes from.
Yes. Now, song 6 is Magic Touch, Paul Stanley. Song 7 is Hard Times, Ace Frehley. Song 8, X-Ray Eyes, Gene Simmons. And song 9, Save Your Love, Frehley. So here's what we've got. We really have the 2 songs they released were disco. The Paul Stanley stuff was disco because he was kind of taking on that bet to say, hey, I can do this. So he did it. Ace Frehley songs are not disco whatsoever. Neither is Gene Simmons.
No.
And Peter Criss just did the one song. Peter Criss did the one song, Dirty Livin', that led into this, and that was the only song he did. In fact, that's the only song he was performing on with drums because he was recovering from a car accident that messed up his wrist. And the band members, Gene and Paul, said, you know, your drum playing for Peter Criss is subpar, and you have huge issues with drinking and alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
So they bring in Anton Fig. The future Anton Fig comes into play.
Anton Fig was the drummer on Ace Frehley's album for Best of Solos.
Yes. So his 1978 album that Ace Frehley did, he brought in Anton Fig, the Australian-born drummer, and they said, "Hey, how about you come back?" And he's a session guy, a session drummer. Do all the songs, all the drumming. Peter Criss says, "Well, I'll do the one song myself for Dirty Living." But of the 9 songs on the studio album, 8 are by Anton Fig. I didn't know that either. So the last thing is this. Check this out. And I know you got some updates coming up with your homework, but Ace Frehley, they liked his sound, they liked his vocals, but he lacked confidence. If you're looking at the image here now, Ace Frehley's bottom left, the spaceman, lacked confidence on being a lead singer. Although he did do one song on Love Gun called Shock Me, one song on Alive 2, the studio songs called Rocket Ride. Those are the only 2 songs that he sang on. Neither of those songs were even released as singles, right?
Yeah.
So he sang twice. Now he comes to this album, studio album, sings 3, breaks his own little record there, sings 3 songs on the album, overlaps Gene, who only sings 2 for the first time ever. He had more songs, vocals on any album. Gene and Paul always were the lead singer. And then they would do some throwaway songs with Ace and Peter to give them. But this is very interesting. 3 songs sung by Ace. You never see that again. Only 1 by Peter, 3 by Paul, 2 by Gene Simmons. And there's your 9, just like that. And the Paul Stanley stuff on the songs he did, he even played bass on 1 song. He played all the rhythm and lead guitars on the 3 songs that he did. Gene Simmons played the 2 songs that he had was vocals, bass, and he also plays rhythm guitar on his song called X-Ray Eyes. Ace Frehley
almost kind of like a Solo's greatest hits in a way.
It kind of is, which I didn't know until yesterday when I was reviewing this album, Andy. This is a solo, basically a compilation of solo work again.
They're extras from their solos,
Ace Frehley does vocals, lead guitar, all the guitars, and he plays bass on 2000 Man, Hard Times, Save Your Love. So Anton Fig
he does all the stuff except the drumming, which was the drummer from his solo album.
Yes, so this is a big kudos album for the low guys. Ace Frehley never gets that much credit. They use his drummer, and he has 3 songs that are outstanding on this. Peter Criss only does 1, but it's the whole reason they went in the disco direction was because of him. So once again, Gene and Paul get all the credit, but this Dynasty album is really it's an Ace Frehley takes the lead on all this stuff with doing the work on all this.
You can almost say this was coming out party after the solos album, really.
Oh my gosh. And I listened to this album again, and there's not a bad song on this album.
No.
If you want to put it in and press play and listen to all of it, you may or may not like it. But if you listen to the Gene Simmons songs back to back, they're awesome. That song, Charisma, if people are not familiar with the lyrics for Gene Simmons, this is about the most egotistical song you'll ever hear. And it's so, you almost laugh or chuckle when you hear the lyrics on that song and he's just a God complex in a comical way. Gene and Paul's songs are all about relationships, love, and women, of course, the normal stuff.
Not a lot of love, but
but Ace's songs, if you put them back to back to back and listen to the 3 Ace songs, phenomenal. And Stanley's songs are phenomenal. So they released 2 of the songs for Stanley. It's got a disco feel to it, so they call it a disco album. Andy, this is 39 minutes long, 19 seconds. It's considered hard rock and disco. And the 2 songs were both released. I Was Made for Loving You, May of 1979. So that's how old right now, 20, 40, 45-year anniversary. 45 years ago, that song came out. And then Sure Know Something was September.
I'll say this, like I said last week about Judas Priest's Turbo album. I like this album. It's not a Kiss album. when you hear Kiss and you start rattle off songs and albums, this one kind of gets mentioned, but it's like not your top 5 albums of Kiss,
Correct.
but we all like it.
Agree 100%.
It's kind of like I said with Turbo 3. It's a Kiss album, but it's not Kiss.
Yeah, I just found that completely fascinating, So Peter Criss is on the outs, going out. Ace Frehley has found his newfound stardom and stays with the band here for 4 or 5 more years after this. But this is never on anyone's radar for top 5 albums. You're right. It's not a Kiss masterpiece. In fact, as I said at the beginning of the show, these photo images were taken separately and then put together in a collage to make it look like they were all standing there. I don't think they were even all 4 in the same room, hardly at all, ever, for this entire album.
They're in the same state.
So comical. But yes, I have newfound respect for it, is all I can say. That's all I've got.
When Gene was starting to dabble in the acting thing a little bit with some stuff. Paul was with other writing. So, the writing was on the wall for a breakup, but Paul and Gene saw the dollars and the business too much to do that. I think they gave it one last shot. And I really think the thing that saved this band was taking the makeup off.
Okay.
That kind of gave them a new life. And then they were able to do those 7 or 8 albums without makeup. They put it back on, Rebirth. So they kind of had 3 stages. But this was the beginning of the end for the first of 3 lives for Kiss, if you will. There was this genre, the first makeup, the non-makeup, and then the makeup again. This was at the beginning of the end. You're losing Peter Criss. Ace is starting to grow a pair and have a voice. Hey, Gene's doing his thing. Paul's doing his thing. But there was still supply and demand. People still wanted Kiss, though.
They had the film was out around this time.
Kiss and the Phantom of the Opera.
Yes.
They were on Scooby-Doo, for crying out loud. Come on.
It was huge, so they knew they couldn't end it, but people wanted the makeup off. So
they were marketing everything. So
the album that came out after this was called Unmasked, and they never even took off the album till the makeup until the following Lick It Up. I think
Lick It Up was the first one without makeup. Yeah.
So they were playing on that as well to get people interested. Hey, we're unmasked. No,
because Unmasked, that was Vinnie Vincent's first album, right? Unmasked.
I don't.
Yes, because he was in makeup for one album.
No, he came on. Vinnie Vincent was.
He was in Lick It Up.
Maybe on the tour in between, but he was started on, I think, Lick It Up.
Yeah, but he had makeup on. He had that goofy ass makeup stuff.
He was in makeup for the one of the tours.
Yep.
So all these guys were all going in their different directions. The fans loved it because it's just everywhere you looked, there was Kiss stuff. They didn't know what was all going on behind the scenes. And a lot of this came out later in the books and the biographies, all the tension that was going on. But boy, Peter Criss, the drugs, the alcohol, his wrist was shot after a car accident. Ace Frehley almost died in his car accident.
Go ahead.
Ace Frehley almost was killed in his own car accident that really woke him up. But these guys were out of control. With
today's social media, would this band have survived through all that stuff?
I think each one of those things that happened to this band that kind of was under the ripples or bubbling under the surface would have been front page on TMZ today, trending on Twitter. All these things that were going on, my goodness, they probably would not have lasted.
I don't think they could have survived. One more thing. Speaking of disco.
Okay.
Speaking of disco, tomorrow is the anniversary of Disco Demolition Night. July 12th, 1979, at Comiskey Park in Chicago, Illinois, ended in a riot.
Literally.
At the climax of the event, a crate filled with disco records was blown up on the field between games of a twilight doubleheader between the White Sox and the Tigers. Many who came to see the explosion rather than the game and rushed onto the field after the demolition. The playing field was damaged by the explosion and by the rioters, and that the White Sox were required to forfeit the second game against the Tigers. So Tigers won the second game 9-0. It gets better. In the late 70s, dance-oriented disco was the most popular music genre in the United States, practically after being featured in hit films of Saturday Night Fever. However, disco sparked a major backlash from rock music fans. First of all, this game happened between games of a doubleheader. It was not a scheduled doubleheader, so it just worked out that way. White Sox officials had hoped for a crowd of 20,000, about 5,000 more than usual. Instead, at least 50,000, including tens of thousands who were outside the stadium, and the thousands more continued to sneak in after capacity was reached and the gates were closed. Many of the records were not collected by the staff but were thrown like flying discs from the stands. After the DJ Doll had blown them up, the collected records, thousands of fans stormed the field and remained there until dispersed by the police. Now, here's the local twist. We always have a local twist sometimes, Dan. Here we go. The second game was initially postponed, but was forfeited by the Tigers the next day by order of American League President Lee MacPhail, president of former Twins president Andy MacPhail, his dad. So there's the local twist on it there.
Okay, yeah.
Disco Demolition Night proceeded and may have helped the decline of disco in the late 1979. Some scholars and disco people have debated whether the event was expressive of racism and homophobia. Disco Demolition Night remains to be known as one of the most extreme protests or promotions in Major League Baseball. Because a lot of people were saying disco music was, if you didn't like disco, you were homophobic. Because disco is considered to be a gay man's music and stuff like that with some of the stories at the time. And performers who cultivated the gay image, such as the Village People, described by Rolling Stone as the face of disco, did nothing to face those perceptions. The fears that rock music would die out increased after disco albums dominated the 21st annual Grammy Awards in 1979. A number of anti-disco incidences took place the first half of 1979 on the West Coast in Seattle and in Portland. Early 1979 season, that's the White Sox game was rained out. That's why it was a doubleheader. Where's one other note I had on here? Mike Veeck, he was head of promotion, so he took the rap for it. So that's why he was banned from baseball for a while. In the weeks before the event, Dahl, who was the DJ who started all this, invited his listeners to bring records they wanted to see destroyed at Comiskey Park. He feared that the promotion would fail to draw people to the ballpark, and that it would be humiliating. The previous night's attendance had been 15,520, and Comiskey had a capacity of 44,500. So he was a little worried no one would show up. The White Sox were not having a good year. There were 40-46 going into the July 12th doubleheader. The White Sox had hoped for a crowd of 20,000. Mike Veeck hired enough security for 35,000. Owner Bill Veeck was concerned the promotion might become a disaster and checked himself out of the hospital where he had been undergone some tests. His fears were when he saw the people walking towards the ballpark that afternoon, many carrying signs and described disco in profane terms. So it's not looking good. I got one other note here. I'm trying to find dozens of people. Okay. The one time they tried to get people, can't find the quote here where it was, to get people to calm down, they started playing Take Me Out to the Ball Game over the PA system. Yeah, here it is. Harry Carey was the announcer for the White Sox. Harry Carey unsuccessfully attempted to restore order via the public address system. The scoreboard flashing, "Please return to your seats," was ignored, as was the playing of Take Me Out to the Ball Game. They ran out of things to do. Hey, they were done. So today, tomorrow, happy anniversary Disco Demolition Night. 45, 79, so it'll be 45 years.
Any kind of promotional idea like that, you never know if it's going to bomb, it's going to fail, or if it's going to be successful. You never know. That's the whole thing of being in that marketing arena. Something I'm obviously not very good at, but the people that are in that with the creative minds to do some of these things, you're always taking a risk. And then the DJ from the radio gets on and really gets this thing going. It was his brainchild, essentially. And then this thing spirals out of control.
Well, the reason he was mad, the station he was at went to a disco format. So he went to a different station.
Right.
And that was the initial burn in the saddle.
The payback.
Disco.
And we're talking, Kiss at the beginning of this episode, then the rock bands themselves didn't know, should we jump in 2 feet into the disco world, if that's going to work? Should we go in with 1 foot, or should we stay out of it altogether? It really caused all this consternation with the bands. What do we do with this? What if it turns out to be huge and we miss it? What if it turns out to be, what if we shoot ourselves in the foot here by doing this? It was, and I wasn't following this either with you back in those days, probably as far as the marketing of all this, but it must have been a tough, touchy situation and what to do.
Well, like I said, that's the homework now. Kiss did, like they said, what was the sound of the times? Listen to music today, where they said all sounds alike. Kind of does. Yeah, if all of a sudden Stone started playing the banjo with their feet, and that song went number 1, everybody all start playing the banjo with their feet. The only thing that didn't work out successfully like that, except for the artist, was the Framptophone. Peter Frampton with his Framptophone. You hear that every now and then in a song.
Yeah.
It didn't really take off. But, when a lot of bands came out and started kind of going more acoustic and unplugged, that kind of became popular for a while.
Correct.
Hey, there was that time for a while, rock guys all redid country album songs and vice versa. That kind of became a thing. It was a phase, And Kiss jumped on that bandwagon for an album or two, and look what happened. But on to other stuff musically here.
Yes.
The 13th of this month is the anniversary of Live Aid, July 13th, 1985. It took place at JFK Stadium in Philadelphia and Wembley Stadium in London. There's your performers. You can look all this up. That the Queen performance on here is the best. That kind of stole the show. A lot of other bands really did good. Black Sabbath reunited for this. A lot of other people said certain bands they were the best. That was their show. Neil Young was our Thompson Twins, Simple Minds, Santana, Robert Plant, Huey Lewis, Jagger. In London, you had Adam Ant, you had David Bowie, you had Dire Straits, Elton John, Spandau Ballet, Queen, U2. U2 at the time was the best on that bill until Queen hit. So like I said, you gotta watch Queen. Watch the U2 performance too. They were really good. I always get tongue-tied when I say that. Watch U2 on YouTube. It's kind of weird to say it. Here's a picture. Here's from Wembley Stadium. Here's JFK. Packed. We will never see something like this again because, A, financially they won't. You can't get these artists to do that again, charity or not. You won't get names like that. An all-day festival in 2 different parts of the world. No. They tried. It didn't happen. Bands made it too much about them and the TV rights instead of just, let's go out, play 3 songs and have fun and see everybody else. Which is what this turned out to be. But here it is on the stage, July 13th, 1985. JFK Stadium in Philadelphia. Wembley Stadium in London. This was off the heels of the Do They Know It's Christmas thing by Bob Geldof. The names are, like I said, Tom Petty was on stage. Zeppelin, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Sabbath reunited. Phil Collins performed. Phil Collins performed on both continents because he had some hookups with a Jet and a Concorde, and he planned both shows. Now, here's the one number that this is 1985 numbers, so think about me today. That concert raised approximately 150 million pounds in money in the one-day event.
Jeez.
More concert information for you here. Outtakes August 31st. Bar and Grill is going to have 32 headshots along with our friend's new Defective opening for him. So there you go.
Nice.
The Bowl and Shakopee. Yeah, we pushed them a lot because, well, we like the guys out at the Bowl. So here we go. Yesterday, that was yesterday, Wednesday.
Yeah, and these are the outdoor
tonight.
Yeah, the outdoor,
Yep.
Not indoors. This is the outdoor patio. Nice, very good sized stage they've got there.
Now, if you see someone on here and you go, I want to go see them. Oh, it's raining. They move it inside. But weather permitting, they'll be outside all the time. Saturday night, Dust and Bones at Floyd's out in Victoria.
Nice.
I don't know if that's. I'm guessing it would be outside with the weather, but we'll see. We shall see.
Good show.
Couple memes I saw as I was looking at the computer today or this week. Taylor Swift. I write songs dedicated to my exes. There's Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham.
I didn't see that one yet.
They sing about their poor relationships with the other person on stage.
Yes, that's cute. Oh my gosh. How horribly awkward.
I love Lindsey Buckingham's music. His solo album that they did after they came out. Underrated. And of course, Billy Vanilli, watching people get famous lip syncing on TikTok.
That's very good.
One more thing. If we had a breaking news button, I would push it. Friends of the show sent this to me today. Heard this yesterday. And One for All, the Metallica tribute band, and Queen of the Reich will be performing the night before show at Bogart's Entertainment Center. The night before what, you ask? The night before the Metallica concert at US Bank Stadium, people. And One for All, if you follow we put on our social media and on there also, they announced they were asked by Metallica 93X to perform the night before Metallica came. And Queen of the Reich is going to be on there too with that bill. Queen of the Reich, talking to Beth, as she mentioned on our show before, they will be performing Operation Mindcrime that night.
And I think that's the first time they've done it.
Yes, they'll be their Virgin flight. They've been working on it. They're going to crack it out right there. We are working. I got the interns working on trying to get a show set up with these two beforehand. So there you go. You heard it here first.
It's coming up in August. I mean, we're talking a month away. That's going to come up quick.
Yeah.
And this Metallica tribute band is supposed to be the deal, the real deal.
Yeah. Off the hook, as the kids say.
Off the hook for sure. That should be good. We haven't seen them live before. We have seen Queen of the Reich live before, but these two are big, up-and-coming Twin Cities local tribute bands. Must see.
Yes.
Try to get out and see them if you don't see them in August another time. But those two that night before should be an awesome show. And at Bogart's Apple Valley, place should be packed. And once again, Metallica's coming to town and playing US Bank Stadium in the big green. What do you call it?
In the greenhouse. The big greenhouse.
The greenhouse is where it's going to be. Metallica is going to be playing their huge show. But boy, that's Friday. These tribute shows on the Thursday night prior should be good.
Now, neither one of us are going to the Metallica show, either one of the shows. If anyone listening is going and wants to report in the next week after here, let us know with your pictures and your review of the concert. We'd appreciate it.
Were they the first band that opened US Bank Stadium from a musical act? It was Metallica was the first band, right? Wasn't
at the band? No, they've had concerts there before.
No,
when it first opened, you mean?
Yeah, the first band to play there when they first opened, I think from a musical perspective, I think it was Metallica. So this will be their second time there, I believe. But please correct us if I'm wrong. But interesting. That should be a great a great show. But that's all I've got for this week. Anything else, Andy?
No. We try to tie things up like this, like, Disco Demolition Nights. We did the Kiss album that was kind of disco. If you know of an album with a certain, like a big anniversary, don't go, this is their 17th year anniversary. We don't care. 45, 55, 50, a big name anniversary. An artist who's their 65th birthday, and here's their first album. Let us know. Drop it in the comments. We'll look into doing that album.
Yeah, 45 years ago this summer, that Kiss Dynasty album was all the rage. 45 years ago. It's unreal. All right. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye.